of the Commission's decision. We advise that you seek your own independent legal advice to ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements have been met. All right. The next thing is, per the Tennessee open meeting law, we always take the opportunity at this point of the meeting to, if someone wants to speak about a matter under the purview of the commission, you are welcome to step forward. Yeah.
Defendant or prosecution?
Yes, sir. State your name for the record, please.
That's very kind of you. Thank you. I hope representing myself and I think a lot of other people that I've talked to, this idea that we continue to add meters as a revenue enhancement to the city, at what point do we consider the people enhancing their life? I mean, you know, you got these families already in this incredibly expensive city and it feels like a money grab all the time, and I'm not talking about parking. And now you have people that, oh, you know, get a sandwich or a cup of coffee. Now they have to pay for parking. Elliston Place. These are not tourist areas, and I'm not for sticking to the tourists either. But why are we continue? 115 meters we had more and more because the city has a history of mismanaging money going back over a decade. Is everything a money grab? And at what point is a revenue opportunity? What's the flip side? Who's representing the people? Who's representing the people who have quality of life to keep things under control? Why add a couple bucks extra to a sandwich? I think it's a fair question. I also represent some people at Ascension Church that are paying to go to church now for the first time ever on meters. There's a lot of elderly people at that church, fixed income. You know, it's hard enough for them to try to tithe and help with that church, and now we're charging them to park on Sunday to go to church? Those are my comments. I invite any kind of response, or if you'd like to talk after the meeting, I understand as well.
We mainly are taking comments, and I think on our agenda later today, we'll be having an update concerning the parking program in Nashville. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. If you would state your name for the record, please, sir. And
Sure.
welcome.
Yeah, Jeremiah Wooten. I wasn't going to publicly comment.
Say your name again, please.
Jeremiah Wooten. Do you need my address or anything? No, okay. I wasn't going to publicly comment, but I guess after hearing that, I'd like to remind you all that the right-of-way is not just for those Nashvillians who own cars to store their private automobiles for free. So keep in mind, as someone who lives in Nashville and doesn't own a car, I have just as much right to enjoy downtown as someone who drives a car downtown, right? So thank you all for not prioritizing those car owners and giving them free private storage. You know, I'm not allowed to store 20 feet of my property in the right-of-way for 12 hours on a Saturday or Sunday just because I want to. And we shouldn't allow car drivers to do that either. So thank you so much for prioritizing all Nashvillians, those who don't drive downtown, those who walk and bike and take transit and don't have the wealth to be able to afford a car. So thank you again for prioritizing all Nashvillians. Please continue to do that and not just cave to the demands of those who deserve or believe that they deserve to be able to drive and park directly in front of wherever they want. Because that's not a right. It's not in the Constitution, not in the Tennessee Constitution or anything. Thank you.
Thank you for coming down and sharing your comments. Okay. Is there anyone else? Okay. Looking for a motion for the approval of today's agenda?
So moved.
We have a first. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Agenda is approved. Okay. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes of the September 11th meeting?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
The The minutes are approved. Okay. Approval of consent agenda. There's one item on the consent agenda, and that is to modify the yield stop control to two-way stop on Indian Springs Drive at Harpeth Valley Road, requested by NDOT.
I mean, this is the only item on the consent agenda. It's just, kind of a situation we don't see much, where we had yield signs instead of stop signs for a two-way stop. With just seeing this and noticing this, we wanted to change it to stop signs instead of yield to be more appropriate for this location.
Okay. Any comments, or is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
We have a first. Is there a second? We have a second. All in favor? Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. The next item, 6.1, is an authorization for a 15-minute limited parking, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., Monday through Friday, on both sides of Rosa Park Avenue, north of Union Street. State shuttle parking only, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., Monday through Friday, on the east side of Rosa Park Avenue, south of MLK Boulevard, requested by the state of Tennessee. Staff, any comments?
Yeah, just real quick. This location came into us from the state of Tennessee. This location had 15-minute parking existing on the east side, and also two parking spots that were off the edge of the travel lane on the west side. And this location probably needed a carve out for a fire lane. I believe that was part of the conversation that was had internally over at the state. And so they wanted to also not only carve out of the 15 minutes of fire lane, but to also, because it is one of the taller buildings in the city, also to carve out a state shuttle loading near the entrance to the garage at Tennessee Towers. There is frequent state shuttles loading there in the morning and in the evening. Used to ride that shuttle, actually. So I do know it's quite frequent. So we looked at their requests. We made some tweaks to it for safe offsets from crosswalks and from the entrance into the garage. And what you have in front of you is what we agreed to and what we're recommending now for the safety around that building. We did have conversations with our Connect Downtown study staff and also our parking staff. And recommendation that came from the parking was to actually, after those hours, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., to open this up for smart parking, metered parking, for the 15-minute, the 3 spaces on the east side, and the 2 spaces on the west side. So that's our recommendation to the commission.
Questions for staff? Comments? Yes.
One question, the 2 spaces that pull off 15 minutes, is that in the right of way, or are we utilizing that parking lot?
That's in the right of way.
Okay.
So can you explain a little bit what's going on now? I'm familiar with the area, but what is the state asking us to do?
Yeah, absolutely. You can go to the next slide. There's, you can see the parking on the east side of that street, Rosa L. Parks Avenue. And what they're trying to do is carve out a fire lane so a fire truck could pull up beside if there was any issues and not have to work through those vehicles. So that's reducing, the, 8 or 9 cars that are parking there down to about 3. And then leaving a little bit of room for the state shuttle to park, to load. In the hours of 6 a.m., 6 p.m.
So really the only southern 30 or 70 feet there is going to be for public parking?
Yeah, that's what's left of that now, 15-minute parking within those hours. And then that switches after 6 p.m. To meter parking.
So do we have a meter there, a smart?
Yeah, it's going to go.
When is that estimated to come in?
I'm not sure.
Good afternoon. Diana Alarcon, Director over NDOT. The meter's actually already in. We're going to be using e-commerce in this area because it's just the 3 spaces for the 15-minute and then for the shuttle. That will become public parking after the 6 p.m. time. So from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., we're asking for you to consider turning those over into public parking spaces, and then during Monday and on the weekend as well. And then Monday through Friday, the request that the state sent in would be in place. So we would sign it accordingly, but it would actually be an e-commerce scenario.
So the places that are public parking now, are they regulated by anything?
No, ma'am, not at this time.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Is there a motion? We have a motion on this item.
I'll make a motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a first and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. It has passed. Thank you. The next item is an authorization for a new passenger loading zone at the curb cutout on 20th Avenue South near Terrence Place, requested by Vanderbilt. Welcome. Please, nice to see you again.
Hey.
Please state your name for the record.
Yeah, good afternoon. Good to see you all again. I'm Michael Briggs, Director of Mobility at Vanderbilt. So we have a request in to you all as part of our graduate student housing development called the Broadview here. When we reviewed this with Public Works, probably 4 to 5 years ago, there was a requirement for a pull-off for a rideshare pickup and drop-off zone. So that area has been built. It just has not been signed for that. And so this will allow NDOT staff and the city to be able to manage the spaces much more effectively. So I believe that's what's before you all on the agenda today.
Staff here to comment as well.
How you doing, everyone? Brandon Boatswain, Last Parking. So we've met with Mr. Briggs out on site, and it's our recommendation to make this curb cutout a 24/7 passenger loading and freight loading zone, so that way it can be mixed use for ride share as well as any freight drop-offs.
Okay. Any questions from commissioners? Okay. Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second? We have a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion's been approved. Thank you all very much. The next item is an authorization for a truck restriction. No trucks over 16,000 pounds on Battle Road from Burkett Road to the Williamson County line. This has been requested by NDOT. Staff.
Yes, Corby, if you could switch to the next slide. So you can, yeah. So the first and second slide, the first one, you can see more of the geometrics, having like right turns at 2 different points along this route. And this is a picture of one of those right turns. It's just a narrow roadway, and you've got large trucks, and they're just kind of tearing up the roadway. And I've seen this in other places too, and the restriction is just to try to mitigate the damage. And also, the trucks turning these curves actually have to enter the opposing traffic lane. So we're just trying to mitigate that. It's not going to be perfect, But we do want to kind of give trucks a heads up because GPS paths trucks everywhere these days. And it'd be nice just to give them a heads up.
Any questions? Is there a motion?
What's the, if there is construction or anything on that road where it's necessary, what's the procedure, or how do they, access it then? Just curious.
What do you mean by construction on that roadway?
If there's, are we putting up a sign to restrict vehicles of that size? Or just to, take caution?
It's to restrict, if you've got construction and there's vehicles that have to enter that route and there's no other route. I don't think that that's going to be, they could come to us and say, is there an issue or something like that? But I think as long as they're not a through movement, that they're actually going to a location on that roadway, I don't think that would be an issue.
Okay.
From what I've seen in other states, how that's handled.
Understand.
That's my understanding as well. Legal, can you comment on that? That's my understanding of the restriction. If there's an owner who does work on that road, that requires a vehicle, they can access it. Okay. That's my recollection of past discussions here, but,
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look into that and get back
Okay.
to you.
all right. Okay, because that's a very valid question. Okay. Let's,
Do we need a motion to defer?
yes, we need a motion to defer till we hear from legal.
Till next month?
Yes. We have a motion to defer. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. All in favor? Okay, we're going to defer this pending legal. Thank you. Okay. Okay. The next item is there's an authorization for a new signal at Dickerson and White Creek Pike. This has been requested by NDOT.
Yes, thank you, Chair. We have someone from planning who is familiar with the project that is asking for a signal at this location. We do have awareness of some safety issues here at this location and fatalities in the past. And I think the combination of the development that's coming in plus current existing concerns that we have, signal is probably an appropriate thing. I just do not have a study that is final at this time to share with the commission. But to hear more about the project would be a great opportunity for planning to present.
You would state your name for the record and welcome.
Thank you so much. Hello, everybody. Thank you for letting me have a chance to explain this. I'm Hannah Davis. I work in the housing division at Metro Planning, and we focus on housing security for Nashvillians. The program before you today is called Connecting Housing to Infrastructure. And what we're looking to do, we have $4 million of capital spending plan funding. And we're very grateful to NDOT for being our partner on this work. We want to make sure that where we're building affordable housing throughout the county, we're making sure to bring above and beyond infrastructure improvements for the health and safety of the neighbors who are living there and in the surrounding area. So typically how it works is a developer applies to us and then we go through the process. In this case, we reached out to the developer because this is at Cleveland and Dickerson. And obviously, I'm sure all of you are aware of the fatalities on that corridor. So we saw the opportunity to potentially fund something here that would make it much safer for the folks that'll be moving into that pretty significant development. The developer, Dominium, was eager to kind of participate, even though it's a new program. This will be the second project we fund, and the first was a hawk signal further north on Dickerson. And the NDOT staff has been exceptional in helping us kind of identify options. We were looking at doing some smaller infrastructure improvements, and then they came back and said, actually, based on another recent fatality, we really think that we should just go for the full signal. It's going to take more work, be more expensive, but it's the right choice for our neighbors. So I'm grateful to NDOT staff for advocating for that. And so the last piece is a warrant analysis, which I believe we have finished, but we did not obviously get posted in time for the commission's consideration in time to meet the public notice requirements. But we'll look forward to coming back with this and being able to move forward. So the developer will complete the work, NDOT then inspects and accepts it into the right-of-way, and the housing division will pay for that improvement.
Any questions from commissioners?
Pedestrian safety, are we going to have pedestrian safety crosswalks?
I'll look to NDOT on the specifics of what would come along with the full signal.
Yeah, you should have in front of you the intersection, and it's with the signal, it would be modified to show, making it a little bit more difficult to enter Whites Creek from a left turn movement going northbound on Dickerson. So not only geometric changes, but also crosswalks at a signalized intersection.
Could you explain what the areas in red mean? What's happening?
Yeah, it was just red is just representing of modifications to that intersection. So I don't know if you can see it, to just the crosswalk that is adjacent to a median or a new median is just to make it slow vehicles down when they're making a left turn going northbound on Dickerson. I know this picture is rotated slightly, but that's really just to not make it so where what's happening right now is Dickerson northbound left turn lane, they can start turning way before they even get to the intersection and actually cut into oncoming traffic and make a really high-speed left turn, which is not safe for pedestrians or southbound Dickerson traffic, et cetera. So it's just a skewed intersection that we're trying to clean up.
Where are the locations of additional crosswalks near here? Because my understanding, they should be, 200 to 300 feet apart to encourage crossing in the
Yeah, we have,
place.
there is another intersection in Cleveland, just south here, almost 600 feet, that has crosswalks. I think with this development going in and increasing pedestrian trips even further, the addition of a signal and additional crosswalks would be desirable with this development.
In particular, there's a bus stop to the north of Whites Creek on the opposite side of the street. So, we kind of anticipated that folks would be trying to make that rather than, going south to Cleveland, going to that signal and then walking all the way up, people would want to try to catch their bus. And so having the signal there also is attempt to anticipate the behavior of the residents.
So it's my understanding we need a deferral because we didn't meet the notification requirement with the signal warrant.
Yes, correct. Despite everyone's best efforts, we were able to turn it around in about a week, but just didn't make the cutoff.
All right. So we could have a motion to defer, please. For 1 month.
For 1 month.
Okay. We have a motion to defer for 1 month. Is there a second? There's a second. We have a second. Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the work on this. Okay. All right. The next item on our agenda is an update on the smart parking program. And we have welcome staff.
Thank you very much. Come on up, Mom. Ready? Before the team starts on giving y'all an update, I just real quickly would like to take a moment to introduce y'all to someone. Emmy, if you can stand up. This is actually Emmanuel, I'm going to try to say his last name correctly, Matas? Muchas. He has joined us as our operation manager over the curb. He'll be responsible for parking as well as for the permitting section and for the Traffic and Licensing Commission. So he joined us last week. He's now in training. He'll be in that training for 6 weeks and then but he's already started jumping in. So you will start seeing him at more often here and will be a familiar face. So I just real quickly wanted to introduce him to the commission. So thank you.
Welcome, Emmanuel, to the team. We'll look forward to working with you.
All right, good afternoon. Do you guys have the slideshow to move on to?
Corby, check your inbox. I just forwarded it to you. I didn't see it.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you everyone for your time today. Appreciate the opportunity to kind of go over some highlights and some updates with the program. So if you flip over to the next slide, you'll see we have a table of contents. We'll just talk about the smart parking implementation, discuss a little bit about the pay stations, the mobile solution with the e-commerce, some technologies, updated maps, some revenue, talk about our staffing, and then we'll end it with some questions and answers for you guys. All right. So starting out, originally we had about 1,300 parking spaces with the old legacy meters that we removed. And as you all know, those meters were accepting payment via only coins, which thankfully we're able to evolve to now accepting credit card coins and also having that mobile solution as well. Originally, we started out with paid parking Monday through Saturday from 8 to 6. And with your approval, thank you, we were able to kind of evolve into 24/7 payment and enforcement in the CBD, which would be downtown, Sobro, and the Gulch. And then the non-CBD from 6 a.m. to midnight, which is Midtown, Edge Hill, Hillsborough Village, Music Row, etc. And here you're going to see, as I know you all have seen throughout the city, what our pay stations currently look like. We are currently working with a team now to do some wrapping, which should come here in the upcoming months. Here when we talk about the mobile payment and e-commerce solutions, so there's been some changes to the signage over the course of time with getting some feedback from the public, the team, and kind of seeing how we can kind of improve. So you'll see the way we've adjusted the QR code to reflect a black and white QR code for a little bit more better contrast. On the middle picture there, you'll see that folks have the ability to select different durations, tiering from 1 hour all the way up to 3, 4, 5, et cetera, depending on what district that they're in. And then on the next picture, you'll see that we've also, for full transparency, have added, different layers to show the base rate, any fees, so that way there's full transparency in there, and it also displays on the customer receipt. All right, now we talk about the citation management system, which is through GTechna. So on the top left photo, you'll see what the actual dashboard will look like on the mobile device. So the enforcement officers will be utilizing Android phones, and through this application, they'll be able to issue parking citations as well as Metro Code citations for the TLC. And then on there as well, they'll have a little bucket where they'll be able to review all the tickets that they've issued throughout the day. It'll be all batched in that folder. And then you'll see right below that, you have timing. So what timing does in areas that we do not have paid parking, and there's only time limit, we can do a digital chalk with each vehicle, which will take a picture of the rear tire. We can set a timestamp, set a reminder to report back within an hour, half hour later, what have you. And then that would stay right there in that bucket. And now as we move over, we have the parking rights. So in the parking rights, the enforcement officers who are essentially on foot beats, they can go in and then scan the license plate through that portion of the application, and then it would verify and check for the validity and make sure that there is, compliance there. And if not, obviously it would tell you that it was not paid. It would show you if you're in downtown and a vehicle is paid for Midtown, it will clarify that and say this vehicle was paid in downtown, but we are currently in Midtown, just for a point of clarification. And then on the parking alerts, if we have enforcement officers in the vehicles scanning, the license plates, they can go over to this portion of the application where it will show you anything that has come through from the vehicle. So that way everyone out on the team can see where the opportunities are.
I also would like just to remind the commission, as we've evolved with some of the new ordinances that have been drafted in the downtown many, which have been in front of you and you approved, such as the sidewalk ordinance and a few of the other ones. We've expanded the job responsibility of our enforcement team. So we're no longer referring to them as parking enforcement. We're actually referring to them as enforcement because we have set up this system to where it can actually print out citations if someone's in violation of the TLC regulations. It also can print out tickets if they're in violation of the sidewalk vending ordinance that recently passed, and the noise ordinance that recently passed as well as parking. So we've expanded the responsibility of our parking enforcement to where they're actually now doing some overall right-of-way enforcement. So I just want to remind you of that. So this process has taken us a little bit longer because we've added those extra responsibilities to our enforcement team as a whole. And just recently, we've added now that they will be responsible for abandoned equipment, our product, our personal property within the right-of-way as well, throughout Davidson County. So we've really have expanded that role as a whole to those individuals on the team. Thank you.
Yes, thank you there, Director. And then on the, if you go back just on the middle picture, that's what the newer citations will look like once the citation management system is rolled out. And then with that, we also have to the right of that the snapshot of what the command center will look like. That's basically accessing the citation management system on the desktop version.
Am I supposed to wait till the end? Okay, thanks. So when we started talking about this, we mentioned there might be warnings, or is there, I know you all have records. If my same car keeps showing up doing the same, making the same mistake, first time that happens, is it like a heads up without a fine?
So if you remember correctly, when we actually moved over into the new program, which was we started this conversion in February, and it took a couple of months for us to get up and going. In the month of April and part of May, we actually did the warning tickets. So everyone downtown did not receive an actual citation. They received a warning as to what they would have been cited for. So if someone was parking and not paying, they will receive notice as a warning that, hey, we're on a new parking program. You you need to do it, and it's 24/7. If they received it for facing the wrong way, let's say where they were opposite of traffic, they received a citation saying, hey, you're facing the wrong way, you need to be facing with the move of traffic, not against traffic. So whatever this, or even in a fire lane, we were giving out notices and informing folks through a warning. And a lot of the reason behind that is that we always have had folks out there writing citations, but not as many. And as well as maybe not as long of a time period. So we just didn't want to. We were originally, when we had shared this with y'all, we talked about doing it for 2 weeks. We actually ended up doing it for 6 weeks. And a lot of that was, there was a big learning curve. But since then, y'all also asked us to put a policy together about excusing the first ticket. So we actually have drafted that policy. So if someone is new or not quite sure or feel there was a mistake, we did draft a policy that we will give a first-time courtesy dismissal, so that then the second time they're aware of what the policies and the procedures and the program is. So we do have that in writing, and we are offering that as well. So there is an opportunity for a first-time dismissal.
So is that what happens as we move to different neighborhoods, different parts of the city to do this?
So when we're moving to the new parts of the city, so if we're moving in and putting in brand new e-commerce, we do that 2-week warning no matter what. So we are doing, right now, we actually do reach out to the business community, making them aware. Remember, that was a misstep on our part that y'all had actually said, go back and work up a process, which we did. So once you approve it, before we ever do the installation, we do outreach to the community, letting them know what's been approved, what's coming forth. We give them a 2-week time period in which to actually respond to us and let us know their concerns and issues. And we have found there are some concerns out there that we need to look at addressing with some of the music halls and the music facilities. So we have found ways to be able to address them through the technology that we have. And then when we put it into play, the first 2 weeks are warning tickets in that particular vicinity. And then after that, they will actually fall into the same program as everybody else, where we still, no matter what, will offer that first-time courtesy dismissal.
Last question on this topic.
No problem.
We also, as we started talking about this, we talked about giving a heads up or having some downtime around places of worship, synagogues, churches, mosques, temples, of redoing any of that. I mean, do people know, if they're used to on-street parking, that that's not available, or will it be available during special times?
So as of right now, because I don't remember that direction, but if that is the direction this commission would like to go, we certainly can. I attend the cathedral over there on West End, so I always end up parking on the street, and I feed the meter as well when I go to church. So, because I think it'd be awfully embarrassing to get a ticket from my own team. I'm more afraid of that than anything. But we certainly can take that into consideration. But at the time, it was 24/7 for the entire street, and not in consideration for any particular religious establishment or anything like that. We're a city now. And so that was the direction we got at that time. But if you want us to go back and write that up and provide you what that would look like, we would be more than happy to. I mean, this is still a learning and process, and that's what it has been. We've only been at this technically we really actually went live in May, and here we are in the month of October. We haven't been very live, so we've learned a lot of great lessons, and we're still learning them, so we can certainly go back and explore that.
No, thank you, Director. So on this slide here, you'll get a snapshot of what our LPR units look like, which is the license plate recognition through Genetech. The first photo is a close-up of what the cameras actually look like. We have 2 cameras on each vehicle, facing right and left. The middle photo, you'll see what the dashboard currently looks like. So within the dashboard, they're able to view the permit hits that kind of come through. They're able to set an overtime rule, essentially what they're currently looking to enforce. They can select the district that they're in or leave it on auto select. So that way, as they move about the city, the vehicle has a GIS map uploaded into the system, so it kind of knows when they're bouncing from one district to the next, and will enforce the business rules accordingly. And then also with that, they can look at a plate list, and it would show you at that current time how many registered license plates there are within each individual district right there. And then they also have a map that will give them a trace of what their movements were throughout their shift. And then you go on to the next slide. All right, and here's what the newer maps have looked like, what we evolved to. So you'll see that we have currently 116 multi-space pay stations that were installed throughout the city from the CBD and non-CBD. We have about 109 in total inventory, remaining to be installed. And, you know, as we follow the new SOPs and procedures to make sure that we do the community outreach, we'll make sure that these meters get put into those places accordingly. And right now, we are at about 1,800 spaces in total, what we have increased to. And on the next slide, you will also see how we kind of broken out the districts. So we have 7 total districts, so zones, and then we have 2 subzones within 2 of the districts here. And then we're also looking at ways to kind of better break down some of these districts and kind of in smaller units.
Excuse me, may I
Yes,
ask
sir.
a question, please?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What kind of criteria are we using for determining location of new meters when we've gone outside? Because we started with, 1,300, now we're up to 1,800, so we've expanded by 500.
Well, I do want to just share real quick, because there were that many single-space meters out there, but we did have some multi-space meters that were actually out on the street as well that we were piloting. We did not move forward with those particular meters, but those spaces are not in that single space. So we actually did have a little bit more than the 1,290 that he had originally spoke about. I believe it was 1,290, right?
Yeah, 1,290 from the legacy
Yeah,
meters. Yes.
but that was just the single head, but we did have a lot more out there. So I will say, yes, sir, we have increased, but not as much as what is reflected on this particular slide, because we did have more than the 1,300 on the street with the multi-space meters that we had. So what we use as a criteria moving forward is one where we have conflicts. So if I'm having a loading and unloading zone conflict, we take that into consideration. If there's a demand in parking, we start getting complaints about parking, we take that into consideration. Our practice right now has been to stay within the footprint that we currently have. So there are a lot of roads that have never been touched that need to be touched, just like the one we brought to you today up there by the state. I mean, there's a lot of parking on this other side street. There's actually is metered parking, but for some reason, we miss streets in between here and there. So our focus is really right now is where meters currently are, is staying within that proximity. Staff at one time, if you remember, got really excited and started moving east, and we pulled all that back because those are conversations we need to be having before we just go marching in. We do have a lot of residential parking in that area, though, and one of the things we're having that discussion with the community on that right now is the residential parking, what it looks like, what it's supposed to look like, and then actually starting to enforce it. That's one of the things that has not been happening is we put these programs in place, but the enforcement didn't happen, so people still weren't doing what they were supposed to. So we want to start with the enforcement side before we come in with meters or anything else that needs to be done. But it mainly comes down to meeting the demand of being able to provide parking for the businesses in the areas, provide the turns. As we had originally said, we really want long-term parking to happen on a surface lot or in a garage, and leave the on-street parking mainly for turns to happen for pickups, deliveries, or for someone who just needs to run in and grab something and come out, so that they won't be parking in our bike lanes or be parking in our unloading zones that are hindering a truck from being able to parking in there, and therefore the truck is now blocking a lane of traffic. So everything's a little step closer to getting us to where we need to be a functioning city.
All right, and you can move over to the next slide there.
I do want to just share real quick, because this will be coming back before you on this. One of the things that we have heard from, not this one, the prior one. Can you go back one more, please? On the location. We have been hearing some concerns from the business community. So for example, if I come downtown, right now, the downtown is one big zone. And I put in for 2 hours, but I'm visiting my banker, and then after that I go over and I visit with my lawyer or whatever, but it's still within that, they still only have 2 hours, but it's in 2 different places on opposite sides of downtown. And then let's say after that I decide I'm gonna meet some family members because I'm downtown, or some business acquaintance for downtown to have some, dinner and appetizers and drinks. you cannot do all that in 2 hours. So we are right now exploring the ability to break downtown into smaller zones. So someone can buy 2 hours in that zone, buy 2 hours in the next zone, and buy 2 hours in the zone to meet that overall business need, especially if the on-street is available, because that's what it's intended for. So we're working on that right now, because that is, again, we're learning a lot as we're going through this. In the past, we had meters out there, but nobody was really looking at trends or paying attention to it. So this is really a brand new program for the Metro Nashville, Davidson County as a whole. So we are monitoring all of that and starting to go back and make some adjustments so it has a better fit for as many folks as we can.
I'm having a hard time understanding. Are you saying that someone can't walk from one part? Is this just downtown Nashville?
So sure, they can walk from one place to another, but that's not the problem. They only have 2 hours. Remember, we did a 2 hour max. So they only have 2 hours to parking. Sometimes going to see your banker can be more than 1 hour, or can be close to 2 hours. And then you go over and visit with your attorney if you're doing a business transaction. You're there for another 2 hours. You've now exceeded the time limit. And so they're saying, this isn't working for me. And typically, in reality, people do get in their car and move to the other side of town. They do not walk. We would love that, but they do not do that. So especially if their attorney's office has a garage that offers complimentary parking, they'll move over to that. But if they can't get in the garage, they want to have the ability to be, parking downtown on street. But then if they decide to go out in the evening, and like I said, meet some of their business acquaintance, they've maxed out their 2 hours. They would have no choice but to go into a private facility and pay the private facility cost. So what we're trying to do is create and allow for those turns to happen for the businesses in different places within the downtown core, and not at all be under one zone.
So are they going to be able, in some cities that I've used, I've been able to extend, okay, I'm going to be here another hour. I can stay in the same place, and I may have to pay more for that third hour, but I can do it from my phone.
We do not have that right now. We have 2 hour max limit. That's what was established and set. That's what's always been in place. And we have altered that in some places, which we've brought to you for extending it, especially around the musical venues and stuff like that. But we've always had a two hour limit. So when we actually went live with the new equipment, we didn't change the rates and we didn't change the time limits. We're now learning time limits are a problem and the zone is too big. So we may come back to you and say, hey, we want to change it to 3 and allow. So right now, if I buy 1 hour, I can add 1 hour, but I cannot add anything beyond that in that one zone. But if we establish more zones that fit better to the downtown core and the downtown business areas, then they would be able to buy 2 hours in that new zone. And so it would allow them that time to extend and still meet the 2 hour requirement. And in talking with the businesses, a lot of the folks that we have spoken to have said, yeah, let's keep it that way, do the smaller zones, and then we'll look at it and see if we need to extend the time limits. So that's what we're working on right now.
Do we have the ability to extend time limits if we choose to?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I think that's under the purview of this commission. It does not require ordinance. Is that correct?
It does not.
Okay, that's
It does not.
That was my understanding.
Right. I actually, as the director, have the authority as well, but I like to be very transparent and bring all of that before this commission because it's an overall program. It's not just one piece of it. So we really want to be very transparent and bring in front of you what we're thinking and what we're trying to get done and accomplish based on some of the comments we're getting back.
We would appreciate that.
Yes,
I think
sir.
that's a good approach.
But we started this way. We want to make sure we stay on that track.
Is our equipment able to, is what I meant too?
Yes,
we have
ma'am.
the technology, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Now, if you look at this slide here, you'll see previously what has been approved by the Traffic and Parking Commission. And counting up the spaces, we're at 563. And that'll be a list from when we first took spaces over to you for approval up until the last previous months. And you'll see that we have marked locations as completed, and we've also set some dates for new installations after we have done our job and due diligence with community outreach. All right. And now looking at this slide, you get to see some fun stuff, right? We get to dive into the number of transactions and revenue that's been flowing in over the last few months. You can see that it's been a steady incline since we've started. Now this BI dashboard is fairly new. We've developed it I want to say in the month of April. And we're still making some changes as we get from some feedback from the team and the public and trying to understand what we can do better. So if you look at this, are currently at through the month of September with just e-commerce and pay station revenue, 1.4 million, about 321,000 transactions. The good thing to note here, we are seeing about an average ticket value of $4.50. And in the CBD, the first hour is, an hour is $2.25, and the non-CBD, it's $1.75. So you can see that we're also seeing a lot of people who are paying that 2-hour rate, totaling out $4.50, and we're just shy of a average duration of stay of 2 hours. You can go to the next one, please. And then on this slide here, we want to present to you guys, to the commission, what the revenue trend has looked like each fiscal year. And as you can see, going in from fiscal year 23 and going into fiscal year 24, there's been a tremendous increase in overall parking revenue that this the division oversees. The team has been doing a great job with pushing for compliance, and in turn, you will see the upside in the revenue.
Because we do want compliance over enforcement.
Correct.
I'm sorry, yes,
Mind
Commissioner.
Going back to the last slide real quick. What's the difference between Flowbird and Last Go, the bottom right-hand corner?
Yeah, so Flowbird, that's the actual pay stations, and then Let's Go is the mobile solutions e-commerce, where people are paying via the QR codes.
The QR code texts are through the app. We call that the e-commerce. I just want to remind the commission that the dollars that we are actually, our net income that we end up in the parking, so it's not just about the revenues we collect, but the revenues we collect minus out the expenses, we end up with a net income. That net income actually by charter goes back into making infrastructure improvements in transportation. So it can go towards signalization, sidewalks, bike lanes, new roads, transit, you name it, we can do it. So the dollars that we are going to be generating are going to have a value. That's not something that's really been, the parking program's never done in the past. It's never made really money. And we're kind of hopeful that maybe we're not expecting it for the first year out of the box to be. We expect it to make money and not lose money for the first time, but we really do expect that we'll see that improve, that we'll start building up some opportunities to be able to actually do what was the intent behind it, which was to have that be not a revenue generator, but a funding generation to actually have money to be able to do some of these transportation initiatives that we need to do for our community. So thank you.
All right. And on this slide, we get to dive into the numbers a little bit further. On the top left-hand side, you'll see the transactions and revenues. And you'll see there from this a little analysis, previously everything was paid via coins, right? And now with this chart, you can see that 99% of our transactions are all through credit card. So it has been a complete swap from paying coins, which is predominantly in all of the transaction types, to now moving over and evolving to credit cards.
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
Excuse me for
Absolutely.
interrupting. Because what's always been an issue about payment was ensuring equity across the community. Because what kind of feedback have you gotten concerning payment systems and as it relates to that issue, please?
We have not, sir, but it is on our mind. So one of the things that we do really want to make sure that we would have the ability to do is, for example, I've been in conversations with WeGo about being able to accept their quick ticket or one of their quick card so that could actually work within our machine. And we actually had a review with Flowbird last week to make sure that we would be able to integrate it, which we've been told, yes, we would. They would be able to do it. So as we are progressing in how we're setting up the system, we are looking at ways, because we also want to be able to connect that with the bike sharing program as well as the scooters, because we do know that 27% of our community is using the scooters for first and last mile ridership versus a car. So we want to make sure where we have some opportunities, we can build all that in. It'll be easier, then it's a platform and it's a lot easier. So someone would not only be able to pay by credit card, but they'd be able to use the WeGo quick ticket, but they'd be able to use it for multiple things, because we do want to encourage the transit opportunities as well.
Right.
That-
You're welcome.
I appreciate that you're looking at that
Yes.
integration.
We
of
are.
the platforms.
Yes, sir. And then on the top right, you'll see the average transaction per day. So with this graph, you'll see that also we're seeing a steady incline in overall transactions, starting out in April at about 200 transactions per day to upwards of 2,500 transactions per day for the month of September. And if you go to the bottom left, you have the transactions by week over week. You'll see as well steady incline with transactions for each week and pushing about, for the last week of September, about 18,000 transactions, for the last period. And the best one of all, at least for me, I like to look at is the bottom right, which kind of shows us the graphs and the volumes by the time of day. And this actually helps us understand how we need to position ourselves throughout each district. We can run it for the entire program. We can break it down just for one district alone and seeing what time of day we're seeing these volumes come through and knowing where maybe enforcement should be during some particular times of the day to help push for compliance overall.
Because again, we're about compliance.
Yes.
Over enforcement.
Yes, compliance is everything. And then looking at the staffing personnel, you'll get to see how the program initially was, how it started out. Very slim to begin with, and then over the course of time, we've evolved. And with this, we have about a total staff of about 34 personnel, including from management down to frontline staff, and really working to kind of ensure that we're able to touch all different areas of Davidson County, because I know before it was a little bit of a challenge, but we're working towards that and trying to make things better.
So we have actually increased the number of enforcement officers, and a lot of that is because we've kind of expanded again the responsibility of our enforcement officers with this latest version and change in the ordinance about being able to tow or manage things within the right-of-way. That's for all of Davidson County, so our enforcement officers are responsible for that. We do get calls. It actually comes in through the hub or through dispatch, especially after hours. That is sent over to our team, and they actually respond to it. So we have upped that up a little bit just to make sure that we are able to meet that recent change that has occurred in both the right-of-way as well as the sidewalk vending, all of that new stuff that's come into play, which makes a lot of sense to have that synergy versus hiring someone or some people to do this and only this. It makes more sense to have the synergy and have them do it all. So, and it also will allow us to not need to hire so many, but we did have to hire up because we're looking more broadly at the whole Davidson County and not just in one particular area.
Right. Spot on. Thank you, Director.
You're very welcome.
And that will conclude our presentations and open to any questions for you.
Of course, I have more. Do the enforcement people have like law enforcement experience, or is there someone that can help them? Because sometimes people are not happy if you're touching their vehicle or correcting them. Are they safe is what I'm asking.
So we do have policies and procedures that have been established to make sure that we can make safety number one for our employees. So if we do feel like it's conflicting, or if they get out there and it ends up being adversarial, they are to step back, say thank you, and contact an officer. So we do have policies in place so that our employees stay safe. If they're not to go in with guns a-blazing, that is not what we want. If they get someone who's very protective, they're to stand back and get the right people there to help. So they are given some experience in law enforcement, but we do not want our officers carrying a gun. We do not. We want them to think of themselves more as ambassadors. Again, we are more about compliance than we are about enforcement. So it's always if someone is illegally parked, let's use as an example on the right of way, it's more about informing them that they're illegally parked and they need to move their vehicle. If they choose not to move the vehicle, that's where the officer would have to respond to. Most of the time, they do what the officer says. They move the vehicle because they don't want, and so it's resolved, and it's resolved without even having to write a ticket. But we always try to go more as being an ambassador before we're ever the enforcement. But unfortunately, you have to have both. And if it does get adversarial, we ask that they contact the police department to get them out there and help. And Code is doing the same thing. So a lot of that was actually shared, not just with NDOT, but with Code as well. So we both had to write up an MOU. That would be a practice and a policy that both code used as well as NDOT used, and also the police department.
So are the employees, are these NDOT employees calling tow trucks or putting boots on cars?
Yes, ma'am. We're not quite there with the booting yet. We actually have to work that through the court system, and there's some state statute that has to be met. There's a pretty thick booting, or you want to say scofflaw, report. We have to go back and clean that up and verify that. That will take us probably a year to do. And then send out, and then the ones that are still valid, we'd have to send out notice, registered mail saying you've met the state statute of 3 citations that have not been fully, and a judgment has been passed against you. Once the judgment's passed against you, it makes you eligible for booting. There's a lot we have to do to clean up because some people probably have paid and it just has gotten lost in it. So we're not looking to go back with what's already on file. We're looking to review that and clean it up, which is what we're also doing right now, because we have a list of over 2,000 vehicles supposedly that illegally parked in the right of way that we're cleaning up and verifying before we do any again, going with the warnings more than anything before we actually react. So we'll do that. We'll start the scofflaw once the citation system's 100% up and running. That's when we'll start a new scofflaw program that it would fall under. In state statutes, it requires that you have 3 citations that have actually not been paid. So therefore, a judgment is made against you to make payment. It's almost like a warrant goes out for your arrest because our courts handle the tickets. And then once they have that and it's in the system, then you're actually eligible for booting. And then you have to pay that boot fee and then pay off also your outstanding citations and all the court fees that are outstanding with it, and the judgment fee as well. So it's a pretty hefty amount. And again, we really want compliance. So we're going to clean up the old one first, send out notice. Hopefully we'll get a lot of folks that'll pay that off so we won't have to put them in the system, which makes our job easier too, and then move forward from there. So again, going with the warning notice first before we just jump into it.
Is there a way to email or text those tickets or warrants?
No, sir. We have to send it certified mail. So we'll do a review of register owner information. So for example, I might have someone on file that has 3 tickets or 4 tickets, but they may no longer live here. So I do a register owner information search, and if I get a hit, we'd send it to them and let them know that, hey, if you come back, you're in trouble, you have these outstanding citations, we need you to pay for them. And once you get a judgment against you, that's even worse.
Any other questions? Okay. Just quick, what's the plans to try to integrate this with some of the other parking programs in town, permit parking and et cetera? Because eventually you'll roll this out to some neighborhoods where I envision there'd be metered parking on a main thoroughfare, but then you have permit parking on
Correct.
Side streets, and you're looking for that integration of enforcement.
Yes, sir. And right now, we're starting to visit with all the residential parking programs that are actually established. We're meeting with those neighborhoods and understanding what's been established and what their expectation is. Once we get that done, properly signed and actually enforcing, we'll go forward from there. So it is true, those are the opportunities where says, permit parking required, or you can park with a permit. So we would mainly do that in a residential, we are going to be a dense downtown. So if they are building something and want to use downtown residential, we will work on them with a residential program. If you remember, y'all actually passed a policy that says this is what qualifies for a residential program. And if they meet that qualification, then it's eligible to stay. We have a lot of programs that were put into place, and it was just a request done by the developer, but there was no criteria or met or anything that was followed through. So we don't want to go in and just charge forward. We want to go in, have the conversation, do the proper review, follow what is now a policy in place, see if it does meet it. If it does, then we leave it alone, but we just clean it up and we start enforcing. If it doesn't meet it, then that's a conversation we have with the community that says, yeah, we know it was done this way, but really it shouldn't have been done this way, because by law, you're taking the public space and you're privatizing it when you do a 24/7, let's say, permit. That's what you've done, is you've privatized the public right away, and you have to have criteria and justification for that. And y'all have established that in the current residential parking program.
Thank you. Are there any other comments, questions? Commissioner. So this is a good,
Thank you for the time.
update.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank y'all.
Thank you very,
Thank
very
you.
much. Okay. Next thing we have are just kind of other items. So if there's things from commissioners, et cetera, to bring forward, let's take the moment to do that. Yes, Commissioner.
I'd like to request that as we are working on our pedestrian safety, that places where pedestrians have been killed or injured, if we could look at doing the things that other cities do about the flags that you put in one place and you cross the street carrying it and put it across the street so people see a pedestrian coming, just to experiment some. And I know that we got such great information last month on where we were with all the pedestrian safety, but I think some of our fellow Tennesseans think it's a suggestion rather than a law about the right-of-way.
Yeah, I agree. So there are some places throughout this city, mainly in where there's some density, like over in Wedgwood, Houston area, where we actually have flags over in the, also over in, forgive me, I'm not remembering the name of the neighborhood, but it's out west. They also have it. So some of those areas, especially where it's located close to a park, they've actually have installed some of a can with the flags that they can wave and leave back and forth. We're open to really anything. It's really some of it we know is a safety element, and we're gonna do what we need to do. That doesn't necessarily create safety, but it does. And if that's what the community wants, that's above and beyond what we would do on our end. And we're more than happy to help support that, if that makes sense. We look at really actually making design changes that would help with improve the safety or slow vehicles down and that kind of stuff. And then the flags would just be like, a cherry on the top.
Well, how about trying it with the place on Dickerson Road where the homeless person was killed? Is that right? Perhaps they weren't I'm sorry, they may not have been homeless. I may be misspeaking. But the new intersection that's coming up on Dickerson Road.
We're at White Creek?
Yes, can we have one there?
Yes, we can add that there. We'll look at adding the flags to that whole initiative.
I may be misspeaking.
Yeah.
I know.
Because there was unfortunately another fatality that happened a little bit further up the road. We just recently installed a pedestrian refuge area, new striping, high intensity crosswalks, striping at the school. And then we did the Smart Growth Pilot Project, which is a little further up where you see the colorful tactical urbanism designs that also created an island with some signage. So we are trying to really expedite that. We've been very fortunate, TDOT, that is a TDOT road, and they've been really good about letting us experiment. Or pilot, I want to say, let us pilot some of the safety mechanisms, improvements along, and then we're monitoring and measuring them and evaluating them for them, because really that's what we have to do. We have to show that there's actually a benefit coming out of it for the improvements that we're making. And we have been able to show that. So that's why we've been successful getting more and more done along Dickerson. No problem.
Any other?
I need to do that in a lot of places in the city, and we're working on that.
Okay. I want to think it was maybe you, Mr. Freeze, who made a suggestion that this commission, we pass a resolution to try to ensure that we have these Vision Zero updates on a regular basis. Can you?
Yes, Chairman, I suggested that there may be a motion from Traffic and Parking to set a quarterly update or some type of frequent update. So you don't have to ask. It's already in the agenda that you get a Vision Zero update when you have Gwendy, our Vision Zero coordinator, come and speak, provide updates on different projects. I think that would be a good opportunity for the committee to hear about that, but also provide input into that process.
Yeah. I think that's the idea would be that, I think it was in September, we had a Vision Zero update, and that was very helpful. So maybe suggestion would be glad to entertain a motion for a quarterly update on the schedule. And then if we feel like that's too often, we can then, but I think there's a lot going on at the present time that we.
So moved.
So moved. We have a motion for a quarterly update. Is there a second? We have a second. Is there any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Okay, that'd be great. Any other items? And I understand, I think at the next meeting, we should have a council member. And at the next meeting in November 13th, we'll be having our annual elections for chair and vice chair. So, okay. Thank you, everyone, for the time. Thank you for the update today, director and staff. And welcome aboard, Emmanuel, and we're welcome. And for everyone who came today to share their comments.
I make a motion to adjourn, sir.
We have a motion to adjourn. All in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov